Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Pradikacharya, Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Pradikacharya, Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to the assembled devotees, all glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Bhakti Glenn, open the door just, a bit, and turn on the fan. The fan too. Thanks. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 4th day of August 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 18, Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. Text number 40. Text number 40. Natat asti prativyam va divideveshu va punaha Sattvam prakriti jar muktam Yade bhi syatibhi gunai Tubir gunai Natadasti prativyam va Divideveshu va punaha Sattvam prakriti jar muktam Yade bhi syatibhi gunai Natad asti prativyang va Divideveshu va punaha Sattvam prakriti jaya muktam Yadebhi syatribhir gunai Natad asti prativyang va Divideveshu va punaha Sattvam prakriti jaya muktam Yadebi syatribhir gunai Natadasti prativyang va Divideveshu va punaha Sattvam prakriti jaya muktam Yadebi syatribhir gunai Natadasti prativyang va Divideveshu va punaha Sattvam prakriti jaya muktam Yadebi syatibhir gunai. No, not that asti, there is Prativyam on the earth, Va or Divi in the higher planetary system, Deveshu amongst the demigods, Va or Punaha again, Sattvam existence, Prakritijai born of material nature, Muktam liberated, yet that Abhi from the influence of these, Syat is to be 3 Gunai modes of material nature. Translation. There is no being existing, either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems, which is free from these three modes born of material nature. Purport. The Lord here summarizes the total influence of the three modes of material nature all over the universe. Okay, going on. So now he's going to go through the different varnas. Text 41. Brahmana Kshatriya Visham Shudranam Chaparantapa Karmani Pravibhaktani Swabhava Prabhavargunai. Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures, in accordance with the material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. Shamodamastapakshaucham Chantirajrumevacha Jnanam Vijnanam Astikyam Brahmakarma Swabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmins work. Shauryam tejo dhritir daksham yudhe chapya balayanam dhanami shudabhavascha chatram karma swabhavajam. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. Kushigo rakshavanijyam vaishyakarma swabhavajam paricharyatmakam karma shudrasyapi swabhavajam. Farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas, and for the Shudras there are labor and service to others. 45. Sve sve karman habidatak. I'm sorry, we're on page 687. Chapter 18, text 45. We won't be there long, there's no purport here. Sve sve karman habidatak. Sangsiddhim labate naraha swakarmanadatak siddhim yata vindati tatchinu. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. Text 46. Yatak pravittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam Swakarmanatam abhyarchya siddhim bindati manavaha. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings, who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. Purport. As stated in the 15th chapter, all living beings are fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Supreme Lord is the beginning of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra. Janmad yasya yataha. The Supreme Lord is therefore the beginning of life of every living entity, and as stated in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord, by his two energies, his external energy and internal energy, is all-pervading. Therefore, one should worship the Supreme Lord with his energies, with his energies. In other words, along with his energies. Generally, the Vaishnava devotees worship the Supreme Lord with his internal energy. His external energy is a perverted reflection of the internal energy. The external energy is a background, but the Supreme Lord, by the expansion of his plenary portion as the Paramatma, is situated everywhere. He is the supersoul of all demigods, all human beings, all animals, everywhere. One should therefore know that as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, one has his duty to render service unto the Supreme. Everyone should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness. That is recommended in this verse. Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Rishikesh, the master of the senses. And by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. This is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 12:7, Te Shamaham Samudartha. The Supreme Lord himself takes charge of delivering such a devotee. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the highest perfection. So, that's quite a few verses we read there. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So first we had these important verses describing the different qualities of the different varnas, beginning with Brahman. The Brahman verse is quite often quoted. It's worth memorizing. Shamo Damas Tapak Shausham. Srila Prabhupada wanted to create a class of Brahmins because he often gave the example, actually from the Shastras, described, think of a society as a body. You know, there's even something called a body politic, you know, like that. So in this Bhagavatam, it's described the Brahmins are the head of society, and the Kshatriyas are the arms. And it's actually said, believe it or not, that the Vaishyas are the thighs. Well, Prabhupada said the belly, you know, which makes sense. They're feeding. And the Shudras are the legs. So every part is important, but the most important part is the head, you know. The head provides the guidance. Without the head, you can't live. You can lose an arm and live. You can lose a leg and live. But so it's important to understand the natural qualities of these varnas, because each one of them is necessary in society. But since society is headless, you know, Prabhupada came to America. This is a good day. Remember that. It's, of course, the anniversary of his departure. There were no Brahmins in America, basically. There's always an intellectual class. He would point this out. Is that there may not be actual Brahmins, but there are intellectuals. There may not be actual Kshatriyas, but there are those who like to join the military and fight. You know, there are certainly plenty of capitalists and people who are farmers and so forth, and there's plenty of manual laborers in any society. There has to be. But the qualities, especially of the Brahmins who guide everyone else, are very rare to find. So the first one is Shamo Damas Tapak Shaucham, peacefulness, self-control, austerity, and purity or cleanliness. Now, these are qualities, certainly the peacefulness, self-control, that are in the mode of goodness. You know, it's the mode. Prabhupada often described the Brahmins are in the mode of goodness, Kshatriyas in the mode of passion, the Vaishyas in the mode of passion and ignorance, and the Shudras in the mode of ignorance. You know, mostly conducted by that. Although when you read in the 7th canto, there's more details of the qualities of different varnas and ashrams. You'll find that there's some qualities that all the varnas are supposed to have. I just read that verse a few days ago. Long list, and that includes the Shudras. And it includes, you know, religiousness and observing austerities and things like that. It may not be on the same level as the others, but you know, it's not just anybody who works with his hands is a Shudra. Most people are outcasts. They're not part of the caste at all. So the first thing is peacefulness and self-control. Now, how can you be peaceful? We learned so much about peace in the 2nd chapter, you know, and the 5th chapter. What's the peace formula? Does anyone remember? 529. Well, let's look at it. We'll chant it together. This one is important. You know it already? Bhoktaram? There's a verse here at the end of the 5th chapter. That's he told this is the peace formula. But the verse is Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Sudidam sarvabhutanam gatva mam shantim micchati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor of all well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material nature. So a Brahman is meant to be a Vaishnava. You can't really be peaceful unless you're a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is someone who recognizes this. And in the second chapter, we find the essence of peacefulness is given near the end of the chapter. Vihaya kama niksarvan pumam sadati nikspraha nirmamo narahankara sashanti madigachiti. This is kind of a summary of other verses describing peace. So the first quality is vihaya kaman niksarvan, to give up all material desires. Well, the only one who can do that is a Vaishnava. Even the impersonalists who want to merge, that's known as mukti kami. Right? That's Prahlad Maharaj says. That's a kind of personal desire. It's not based on love of God. It's not based on trying to help others. It's really a selfish desire. I'm going to be free of all misery, and I'll just float around in the Brahman. So only the Vaishnava can be free of all actual material desire. So what's his desires? You can't be free of desire. Your desire is to please Krishna, to serve the Vaishnavas, to help the people who don't have Krishna. These are all selfless desires. There's no karma there. And be free of possessiveness and false ego, false sense of self. So these are all qualities of the Brahman if he's going to really be peaceful. And self-control, that's also a result of bhakti. Self-control means that you can control Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Manaropasta Vegam. It's a nice list by Rupa Goswami, the beginning of this Nectar of Instruction. There's all of these Vegas, means that pushings, urges from in the modes of nature. An urge to speak, the mind, getting so many urges. And I don't know if you recall, I like to review these verses by Rishabdev, where he talks about how, first he says, you're completely crazy if you're just after sense gratification, because that's going to ensure you another birth for suffering. So that's the first verse. And then he analyzes and says that this defeat means to take another birth. Success is to, get liberation, go back to God. So parabhavastavat, a bodhijata, is born of ignorance. Is born of ignorance. And ignorance means you're not inquiring into the truth of the self. Yavan jigyasad atma tattvam. As long as you're not inquiring into atma tattva, notice the echo of the Vedanta Sutra there. Atato brahma jigyasa. One has to be inquisitive into the absolute truth, the cause of everything. So without that, you remain in ignorance, and as long as you're ignorance, birth and death. This is the second verse. And then, what's the result? He extrapolates on that. Yavan kriyas tavadidam manovai karmatmakam nina shiridabandha. As long as you're in ignorance, you're going to perform fruitive activities. That will mean your mind is karmatmaka. It means it's filled with all kinds of desires of how to enjoy and how to avoid suffering. This is a karmatmaka mind. And so then he says, finally in the third line, evam mana karma vasham prayukte. Karma vasha, this word vasha is similar to the word vega. Vasha means under the control, under the push of karma, of karmic desire, fruit of desire. That's the result of ignorance. Avidyapanupadidami. And then he says the result of the whole thing is pritir. He comes back to love. He says, myself, Vasudev. Pritir niyavan maya Vasudevi namuchate dehi yogena tavat. Until there's love for me, Vasudev, Krishna, there won't be freedom from the bondage to the body. So to really be self-controlled means to be free of these pushings of your lower self, of the material desires, of the materially conditioned mind. And that means a devotee. So it's implied here. Then tapak, shaucham, austere, clean. These all help to keep the mind peaceful. And shantir. Shantir is tolerance, but it's especially the different kinds of tolerance. One can tolerate physical pain, but this is tolerance of insult. If you feel that you should be honored and you're not, you have to tolerate that. Or if someone insults you, that's kshanti. It's also synonymous with forgiveness. You're forgiving people. You don't feel that the more you're on a hair trigger to take offense, the more that you're in the modes of nature. The more that you're Krishna conscious and you let things roll off, then that's the safe place to be. And simplicity in your life, arjavam. Oh, it says honesty. Okay, honesty. I'm sorry. It means not riju, not crooked. Arjavam. And then jnanam vijnanam astikyam. So knowledge and realized knowledge, which comes through the practice of bhakti. And astikyam. You know what asti means? Asti means it is. God exists. He is. That's why the atheists are called Gnostics. No, it doesn't exist. So here's the astikyam, religiousness. Yes, belief in God. In other words, a devotee. These are the qualities which the Brahmin works, born of his own nature. So it becomes second nature, to be a Brahmin like this. Shauyam teja jyoti daksham. So then he comes to the Kshatriya. Now the Kshatriyas are very important because they're real Kshatriyas when they defer to the Brahmins. Otherwise, society is degraded very quickly. When there's no Brahminical culture and you just have out of control kings, so-called kings and military men, you've got a hellish situation. So the key is the Brahmins, and the Brahmins, they are strong because they're referring always to Shastra. Their strength, their intelligence, everything they're doing is coming from Shastra. And so when the Kshatriyas are taking true advice and guidance from the Brahmins, then society can prosper. The Kshatriyas that we see in ideal Kshatriyas, their main mission is to protect the people. That's what Kshatriya means. Triya means to deliver from, and Kshat is harm. So but they have to be powerful. They have to be determined and resourceful, expert. And yude chapi valayanam, always never shrinking from battle. And they give charity also. They exact taxes, but they also give charity. They're not just, the nightmare is when you have this class of military dictatorship who just bleed the people dry. And that can easily happen when there's no proper guidance. The Brahminical class becomes corrupt. That's the great danger. Then you get, as Krishna says in this fourth chapter, what is it? Yadaya dayadama glani bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya. You have first discrepancies in dharma, and then a big preponderance of adharma, and society becomes hellish. Now Ishvara bhava, this is what we commonly call like charisma. Someone who's a natural leader, people look to Ishvara bhava. So they have that. And then, Krishi Gorakshavana, famously it's cow protection and plowing or agriculture. Now this has also been corrupted in modern days. You have these huge agriculture, there's practically no go raksha. There's horrific cow slaughter, pig slaughter, millions and billions of chicken slaughter. It's just a nightmare out there. And that's one of the reasons it's so, chaotic. And then finally, parichayatmakam karma, shudrasapi sabhavajam, that they have labor in the service to others. But how can you remain satisfied in that sudra position? And it's only possible when there's Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you always feel, the inequality, and you want to go on strike, and there's never enough. And you're also taken advantage of because the upper classes are also corrupted, so it's nightmarish. But if you just like in the farms, properly established, well, you had these classes naturally develop. But if you had enough kirtan and celebrations and Krishna consciousness, everybody was satisfied. Many devotees were doing menial service, whatever, And who cares, Because when in a big kirtan, all of these things just evaporate. It's not like, oh look, there's a Brahmin chanter and there's a Kshatriya. No. Hare Krishna. Otherwise, the stratification takes place and the discord between the classes. You know. Now this verse, so by following the qualities of work, every man can become perfect, provided that Krishna is in the middle. And that's the next verse. Yatak pavite bhutana. Now this says, by worship of the Lord. Okay. Krishna, the Lord, is the source of all beings and is all-pervading. By worshipping Him through performance of His own work, anyone can become perfect. You see, that's what that means. Is that by worshipping the Lord through the performing of His, anyone can become perfect. So that Prabhupada wanted a society like that. That someone kind of finds his niche, and his real qualities are being able to engage, and the fruits of basically giving it up to Krishna. It's like spiritual communism. I always sometimes I describe how I was raised as a communist. I wasn't really raised as an Orthodox communist, but I was given a lot of that instruction. So one of the things I remember from that is that there are these various mottos that came out. Religion is the opium of the people. That was one. But another one was, from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs, which is spiritual communism. Provided that the spiritual needs are being met, then people could be satisfied with, what they need, not more than that. Without the spiritual needs being met, then you're constantly dissatisfied deep at heart. And so you're looking to fill that with material emoluments, and there's never enough. This is where greed comes in. See, when mode of passion becomes prominent, then lust is more prominent, and greed takes over. Greed comes from lust, unsatisfied, always burns like fire. And then there's never enough for everybody. There's scarcity, even in the midst of plenty. So when Krishna consciousness is there in the middle, then people can be satisfied in their occupation, and there can be peace in society. So that's Prabhupada gave a nice purport here. So by worshiping the Lord, by seeing Him everywhere, He's all pervading. Now this is Prabhupada talks about that. Stating that the Lord has two energies, external and internal, and is all pervading. Therefore, one should worship the Lord along with His energies. I think maybe we should put that in there. One should worship the Lord with his energies. I'm going to worship the Lord with His own energies? You see the problem there? This is the third sentence in the first paragraph of text 46 purport. It's on like the 7th line. Therefore one should worship the Supreme Lord. Therefore one should worship the Supreme Lord with His energies. There could be confusion. I mean, what's meant along with His energies. Which is what we do. In worshipping Radha Krishna, you're worshipping. Right? Now, of course, it can also be taken, which is what I took it when I first said, worship the Supreme Lord with His energies. Okay. In other words, we're using the lamp by means of His energies. Anyway, there's some ambiguity there. But to work, so much of you may recall in chapter 13 we had like verse after verse of seeing with the transcendental eyes, and one can understand and see the Lord and the super soul and the soul side by side if you purify your vision, So we've been taught that, to see the Lord, to see Krishna by means of His external energy. After all, the deities, of course the deity is Krishna, but began with somebody, vision, and able to carve the deity from external energy, and then installed and then worshipped, and the external energies are transformed into internal energy. It's like that. It becomes spiritualized. So by means of just like our bodies are made of the lower energy, but they can become spiritualized when we're using them to connect to Krishna. So I think that's also part of this purport. His meaning. Okay, any questions on this? We're getting to the crux of this chapter, and that's the crux of the book. It's coming out. Okay, moving along. Shreyan Swadharmo Viguna Padadharmat Swanushtitat Swabhava Niyatam Karma Kurvanapnoti Kilbisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Purport: one's occupational duty is prescribed in the Bhagavad Gita. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahmin, although he may have been born into a Brahmin family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable, if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahmin is certainly in the mode of goodness. But if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahmin. For a Kshatriya, or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs. But a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmin. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party. But if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you I am making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making a profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of a Brahmin. That is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra doesn't matter, if he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahmins who perform different types of sacrifice sometimes must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the 3rd chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of yajna, or for Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sense gratification is the cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. So there's that, and then there's life, in a Harekrishna temple, in which the basic motto is, let's do the needful, right? Have you heard that before? Do the needful. In other words, that so many things need to be done, and we may not be, feel that you're not suited to that. I remember a perfect example of this principle. Way back in 1981 or 82, I was living in Philadelphia with Maharaj. We were working on Back to Guided magazine. And we lived about a mile from the temple, and all of us would pile into, we had 2 cars, we'd pile into the cars and go to Mangalartik every morning, come back, like that. So it's Philadelphia. It means winter comes around, you got to find a way to heat the place, And so it was determined, we had someone who was a natural Vaishya type, and he was always considering how he could save money. So he did various studies and found the easiest way to heat that place, we had a basement, was to put a coal stove in the basement and let the currents of the heat just, waft throughout the building, convection currents. And it actually worked, But it means that somebody's got to empty those ashes and put it in new coal, once a day or once, twice, 3 times a week, whatever it was. So we had a sannyasi there, Jayawada Maharaj, and all of us, pretty much considered ourselves Brahmins. I wasn't a Brahmin. but no one thought they were, constitutionally suited to, get those ashes out and put in the car. But we did it. We had our time, the time of the week we all did it. So we had a guest. We would have various guests come and stay there. Maharaj met this fellow. He was an Indian gentleman, young kid, maybe in his early 20s. And we found out pretty quickly that he was born in a Brahmin family, because he was staying with us in a couple of weeks, whatever. But no way he was going to shovel that coal. That wasn't his duty. That wasn't his ashram. So, we didn't kick him out or anything. We understood that he hadn't really picked up, from Prabhupada's books and ISKCON what it takes, where anyone does any service. And Prabhupada himself, showed this famously in L.A. how to clean the floor. He gets down on his hands and leaves and, shows how to wipe the floor, properly. Can you imagine? So in Krishna consciousness, when you're truly situated, in Krishna consciousness, it doesn't really, it's not that you're, it's not that you're saying, no, I can't do this because this is my duty, and it's not that you're hankering to do someone else's duty, although you have a certain, it's just that so many things need to be done, and over time you tend to go to the things that are naturally good for you. When I joined, I had 3 hours of Harinam. That wasn't part of Varnashram. But it was, it was like sustaining me in the movement, And then the rest of the time I worked in, we had a little incense factory or little incense, offices and things. And we wouldn't make the incense, but we would pack it and we would pour these oils. They had these little vials of oils we would sell, like that. So that was what I was doing. I didn't think, well, this is beneath me. I can't do this, You just do what's necessary, Harinam. And gradually, I showed the manager of the press that there's some mistakes in the book here, of Krishna book. And he said, oh, you can find mistakes. Here's a red pen. And whenever you can, they didn't give me a room, they gave me a seat, they gave me an office, no desk, no nothing, just a red pen. See what you can find, because we're going to reprint it in the next couple of months. So I read the whole Krishna book, marked it up here and there. And after that, they gave me, instead of filling the vials of oil, that mornings I was working as a proofreader. That's how I started, So I was, I had some propensity. I've always felt satisfied with that service and happy with it, and it's useful. And so Krishna, he puts you in certain situation. Sometimes he's testing you, sometimes he's rewarding you, with the kind of service you're looking for. But in all cases, you need to do what's necessary for things to go on. All right, now the next verse is famous. With all efforts, there's a fault that was born with it. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api natchajit sarvaramba hi doshena dhumenagnir ivavritaha. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Purport: in conditioned life, all work is contaminated by the material modes of nature. Even if one is a Brahmin, he has to perform sacrifices in which animal killing is necessary. Similarly, a Kshatriya, however pious he may be, has to fight enemies. He cannot avoid it. Similarly, a merchant, however pious he may be, must sometimes hide his profit to stay in business, or he may sometimes have to do business on the black market. These things are necessary. One cannot avoid them. Similarly, even though a man is a Shudra serving a bad master, he has to carry out the order of the master, even though it should not be done. Despite these flaws, one should continue to carry out his prescribed duties, for they are born out of his own nature. A very nice example is given herein. Although fire is pure, still there is smoke. Yet smoke does not make the fire impure.
Even though there is smoke in the fire, fire is still considered to be the purest of all elements. If one prefers to give up the work of a Kshatriya and take up the occupation of a Brahmin, he is not assured that in the occupation of a Brahmin there is no unpleasant duties. One may then conclude that in the material world no one can be completely free from the contamination of material nature. This example of fire and smoke is very appropriate in this connection. When in wintertime one takes a stone from the fire, sometimes smoke disturbs the eyes and other parts of the body, but still one must make use of the fire despite disturbing conditions. Similarly, one should not give up his natural occupation because there are some disturbing elements. Rather, one should be determined to serve the Supreme Lord by his occupational duty in Krishna consciousness. That is the perfectional point. When a particular type of occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all the defects in that particular occupation are purified. When the results of work are purified, when connected with devotional service, one becomes perfect in seeing the self within, and that is self-realization. So this is important instruction. That, oftentimes every endeavor is covered by some fault. I mean, this verse is used to encourage devotees who are trying to do some service, but it's not working out, or you go on book distribution, but you hardly do any books, and you have to be encouraged, feel that yes, but it was done for Krishna. You sincerely tried, and that itself is success. And if you keep at it, Krishna will give you the skill to improve. And that's actually what happens. If you're assigned a certain duty, therefore it's bona fide duty, and you try your best to do it, then at first it may be, unsuccessful. But still, you're doing it for Krishna. Your heart is in the right place. You're making advancement, and the more you try to do it, if it's and managerially, hopefully it's somewhat attuned to your natural your nature here, then you can perfect it. Anyone who tries to learn an instrument will understand that. At first doesn't sound so good. You have to get through that point, and continue with the desire, and after some time you have some facility. And especially if you're playing music for Krishna, it's very blissful. But there's always that point when there's a test. Are you determined to do this service nicely? And then Krishna eventually gives you all facility. I mean, today is a perfect day to remember that. I was just reading the part of the Lilamrita describing Prabhupada's, departure on the Jaladuta in 1965. And Prabhupada writes in his diary, or he was telling someone how later on, and it was quoted there, how he tried so hard in India to succeed in preaching in English with the Back to Godhead and the Jhansi affair and so many other things. But he couldn't make any headway. He said, I was just discouraged, at every step. Because at that time, what really broke India open was when he came to India and he had his Western devotees. And it was first of all, it was a shocking thing. It was such an event. They had pandals with thousands of people come. And it was because of the devotees that all the interest was generated, the Western devotees. But so while Prabhupada was in India, he had some following in Jhansi, but then that was taken away, and so he made his determination. I'm going to go to the West, and even the production of the books. I mean, you look at them. The first volume had no diacritics and no Sanskrit, no Devanagari, and but the paper was extraordinary. I've got the set of those books, and they're now some almost 60 years old, and the paper's holding up just fine. Whereas in the books that we printed like 10 years ago, they're all yellow and everything, So it's amazing that part was together. But, Prabhupada even says right there, I know that this is certainly be a failure, his English, and even in his statement about that, there's some mistakes, But, tad bhagvasargo janataga viplavo. That's actually exactly pertinent to this verse. There's a verse in the 5th chapter. Narada Muni is preaching to Vyasadeva. And he's chastising him. Imagine it, for writing books like the Mahabharata, because it wasn't wholly and solely about bhakti. But then he says, those words are very, very skillfully put together, very erudite and ornate, but they're not about Krishna. It's like a garbage heap where crows go. But those words which are about Krishna, even though every verse is miscomposed, they're accepted, they're relished by the saints because of the subject matter. So Prabhupada, he took very great inspiration from that verse, because he felt that his English wasn't perfect, but it's wholly and solely about Krishna, and that therefore it would be a success. So when he had those books printed, he felt very great encouragement. I'm going to somehow or other deliver this message in the form of these books to the Westerners, and he was doing it. He was supporting himself by selling those books at the first, year or so. So, that's covered by some fault, a lot of faults, but Krishna saw the purity and the sincerity, and it's a lesson for all of us too. Just like that marathon, that 17 books in 2-month marathon, that enlivened the whole movement. Here was this really incredibly impossible task. I was part of the press where it took us a whole year to publish 2 volumes of the 4th canto. And then, that wasn't good enough. They moved to LA, and we think, okay, now we'll get it together. We'll do, a book a month or something, and catch up. I said, no. There's 17 books, they have to be done in 2 months. That's impossible. A word in the Fool's Dictionary. And that the thing is, when book distribution started, that seemed impossible. When Prabhupada was contemplating coming to America, that certainly seemed impossible. We just heard about Sumati Morarji. By looking at it in a very kind of cold and logical way, it was a suicide mission. And practically Prabhupada almost died on the way over. But he didn't. Krishna comes to him in the middle in his dream and said, don't worry, I'm taking over. And even the captain, the story where the captain's wife, when they got to New York, they asked, can you please come back with us on the return trip? Because we had it was like a lake. We've never seen the Atlantic like that. Anyone who knows Atlantic can be really tough. Right now there's a huge storm, in the Atlantic and causing all kind of havoc on the East Coast. So that's why it's not like that here. Pacific, peaceful. That's why it's Pacific Ocean. So Prabhupada, but Prabhupada was determined, and after so much struggle when he came, but then the whole thing started to come together, and the thing about it is that when you can hear Prabhupada's, I love those early lectures, 66. Prabhupada is so excited. He's preaching, like even though you hear, the kids screaming outside the door and the cars going by, but Prabhupada is on fire, He's got some people who are actually listening to him and who are actually serving, and they're chanting Hare Krishna. You could see the miracle, you could imagine. And so it was Prabhupada's own enthusiasm, his energy, his purity, that moved people to take the process seriously and become pure enough to give it to others, become vehicles themselves. It was so that's how things go in Krishna consciousness. The Pandavas struggle like anything. Dhruva, Prahlad, they all have this period of struggle and then success. So we can also experience that. Okay, one more. And then we're really going to get into a lot of quotable verses coming up soon. Okay, 49, I think, yes. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigataspriha naishkamya siddhim padamam sannyasena adhigacchati. One who is self-controlled and unattached and who disregards all material enjoyments can obtain by practice of renunciation the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. Purport. Real renunciation means that one should always think himself part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and therefore think that he has no right to enjoy the result of his work. Since he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, the results of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. This is actually Krishna consciousness. The person acting in Krishna consciousness is really a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. By such a mentality, one is satisfied because he is actually acting for the Supreme. Thus he is not attached to anything material. He becomes accustomed to not taking pleasure in anything beyond the transcendental happiness derived from the service of the Lord. A sannyasi is supposed to be free from the reactions of his past activities. Supposed to be. By that, Prabhupada means said to be, understood to be. A sannyasi is understood to be free from the reactions of his past activities, but a person who is in Krishna consciousness automatically attains this perfection without even accepting the so-called order of renunciation. This state of mind is called yoga rudha, or the perfectional stage of yoga, as confirmed in the 3rd chapter, Yas tvatma ratat eva syat. One who is satisfied in himself has no fear of any kind of reaction from his activity. So notice that word naishkarmya. This word came up in the 3rd chapter, in which Krishna says, I forget the Sanskrit, but he says, not simply by not acting, doing anything, can you attain the naishkarmya. It looks like that, because there's a naishkarmya. Okay, no karma, no action. No, naishkarmya is a stage in which none of your activities are motivated by personal desire. They're always motivated by the desire, by the mood of sacrifice. That I'm working, but I'm not working. I'm not going to enjoy these fruits. These are for Krishna. And so, in Krishna consciousness, you can actually attain that state of naishkarmya. Remember in the 4th chapter, Krishna we have to understand what is karma, what is vikarma, and what is akarma. So karma, in that context, is activities or activity that is fruitive, but it's within the Vedic paradigm. Vikarma is outside the Vedic paradigm and is also very fruitive and is sure to bring suffering. But akarma is activity that is not fruitive and is simply for the sake of Krishna. And it's also according to the Shastra. So the whole thing is the motivation. The karmi in this context may be acting, karma kanda, is everything according to the Vedas, but the motive is to enjoy in this life or the next, higher level of enjoyment. The vikarmi is just completely fruitive and is paving his way to hell. But the devotees, they're acting, everyone's doing something, we're acting, but the motive is to please the Guru, please Krishna, with the fruits of your activity. And therefore, there's no reaction. That's true naishkarmya. That's true vairagya and the perfection of renunciation. Renunciation being here detachment, not just giving something up, but giving up the desire for it as well. So that's what, after all, the chapter is titled The Perfection of Renunciation. So we're coming to that. And we'll soon find that the whole thing is perfected. Manmana bhavamad bhakto majjade mam namaskuru. Is that, just think of me, become devoted, worship me and bow down low. You come to me, O friend, I promise you this boon I shall bestow. Give up all the dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjun, from anxiety be free. Those 2 verses are coming up in probably tomorrow or the next day, or Monday. And they encompass the teachings of the whole. If you can follow that, then you don't have to worry about anything else. So we're coming to that. But it's important to understand these principles. We want to be renounced, even we may not formally be a renounced order of life, but that renunciation principle, which is really a question of changing the heart, from one of self-centeredness, ego, to Krishna-centered consciousness, is something we can strive for and we can practically attain if we follow nicely. Okay, we got 1 minute? One little poem? Okay. The miser's prayer, to become a miser. Vichayani vichayani vichinjani punak punaha kripanasya dhanani vatvam namani bhavantunaha. Compelled to constantly collect and count his precious hoard, the miser contemplates his wealth with avaricious aims. Please bless me to become a miser who's compelled, O Lord, to constantly collect and count and contemplate your names. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So 50 tomorrow.